Well, if you've been worried about the price of cooking gas, as we got your back. We have you on this one, don't worry. And when we talk about the economy, we're not talking big macro numbers. We're talking about the one that hits your pockets directly this morning. We've seen two gentlemen on the screen there. It's a shame that oftentimes when it comes to issues that women deal with more, it is the men we invite. But we have someone to question at least as to what is going on with the price of gas. Joining us right now to discuss this is Mr. Dayo Adesina, who's the National Program Manager at the National LPG Expansion Implementation Plan, not program, plan. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Early this morning.
Thank you.
We know that this plan, which you are overseeing, was established in 2017, and it was to ensure that, you know, LPG now becomes the fuel of choice in many Nigerian homes. We're hoping to be able to even go as far as rural areas and to ensure that we did away with dirtier forms of cooking fuel. But it would seem that right now, with the price of gas, you know, growing exponentially, especially in the last couple of months, that plan of the federal government looks like it's now under threat. Can you tell us what is going on?
Okay, thank you very much. You're quite right. I, more than anybody else, I've had sleepless nights in the last couple of months, simply because of the VAT imposition that was, I would say, erroneously imposed on the imported LPG. NLNG, who's the main supplier domestically, can only produce 450,000 tons. Other sources of supply would be from NPDC with another 150,000 tons of butane, which is what we use for cooking. Kwale hydrocarbons, that's in Delta State, would do probably another 130,000 tons. And
what's our need in Nigeria?
Well, our target, so today as a country, if I go by 2020 statistics, we did 1.2 million tons, and that's coming from 750,000 tons in 2017. Per
month? Per
annum? Per annum. No, that's per annum. And with that, our target this year originally was for 2 million tons. So when I say this affects what we're doing and why I'm having sleepless nights, this is exactly the reason, because our targets are now being severely impacted. A lot of people have obviously moved from firewood and kerosene to LPG. Kerosene, of course, had the subsidy removed as far back as 2015. So that price had shot up, and of course, LPG, which was always cheaper, also became the fuel of choice. Can
you give us what are, because there'll be questions as to whether the implementation plan, the expansion implementation plan, has been succeeding, first and foremost, in terms of encouraging more and more people to. Some people will say, well, the price will speak for itself. But some people will also say there's been the fear by a number of people. When you see gas explosions, oftentimes, the lack of knowledge on how to use cylinders has also hindered quite a number of people who could well afford it even before now from taking it up. So it'll be very useful to know if through the implementation plan there's been an uptake of this alternative, or will I say what the federal government proposes as the main source of cooking fuel for Nigerian households.
Well, certainly. Our start point was to have, first of all, look at the regulatory aspects which would enable the industry to be able to make that expansion, because the way the program is designed, it's in partnership with the LPG industry. You have existing players, and you need to be able to expand to other parts of the country. 19 states in this country suffering from deforestation in the north, and it's heading down south. So in order to expand into all those places, because when His Excellency the President submitted made the commitment in 2015 at the COP21 climate change meetings, emissions reductions by 20%. LPG was the fuel of choice in the NDC to replace the firewood that's being used for cooking. The other program was the gas flare commercialization program, which would also bring in a lot of volumes of LPG if implemented faithfully. So the awareness campaign was crucial for us to do as a start point, because if you don't have the buy-in of both the government, the industry, and the people, then you're dead on arrival. So the way the program is designed, the partnership with the state governments is crucial. And that's why we've chosen 12 pilot states to start with.
Yeah, I'm hoping that you'll be able to speak more directly, because we're going to be introducing another guest shortly.
Okay.
Whether you'll be able to speak more directly to the numbers, whether there's been an increment.
Oh, certainly.
You say your target is 2 million, is it? 2
million tons for 2021. That was our original target. That's right.
Before then, when you took up this assignment,
yes,
where were we?
We were at 750,000 tons.
We're at 750,000 tons, and currently it would seem that our need is increasing.
Certainly.
Up to 1.2. So we've seen progress in terms of the uptake, and it looks like now you say your target of 2 million tons is being threatened. Well, he's not alone on this program. We also have Mr. Nuhu Yakubu, who is the president of the Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association. He's joining us via Zoom in Lagos. Mr. Yakubu, you're welcome to the program.
Good morning, Mokwe. Good morning, Daya.
Good morning. Well, obviously, you seem to know him, and that certainly is a good thing. But we're wondering, you are a player in this industry. Why has the price of cooking gas gone up?
Well, thank you for having me. This has become a topical issue. We talk about this every day, as you heard the last speaker say. The issue of pricing is pivoted on 3 issues. One is the issue of the pricing, all right, the international pricing referencing for LPG or for gas generally. As you know, Nigeria is not the only country where you've seen this spike in pricing of gas. So there's been a global crisis in the pricing of gas, you know. So Nigeria is not left out. So if you observe, sometime between May and September or thereabout was when you had the worst times in the spike of international pricing of gas. So because Nigeria's gas is equally priced or reference to international pricing platforms, we are naturally affected. Number 2 is the issue of foreign exchange. You know, the bashing the Nigerian naira has received against international currencies, and then that certainly affects the pricing of gas locally. So if you convert the naira, if you convert the dollar to the naira in pricing that product domestically, and you know that the naira has been losing value against the international currencies, naturally you then see why that's further exacerbated the situation. And then, but most profoundly beyond this, because these 2 situations have somewhat normalized in the last month or thereabout, but most profoundly has been the issue of VAT levy, VAT and import duty levy on imported LPG. Now, Nigeria is not self-sustaining when it comes to a domestic supply of LPG. Domestically, we are not beyond, potentially we can do maybe 700 to 800,000 metric tons of LPG, but we're not even there. All right, you heard Mr. Additional earlier speak about NPDC supply 150,000 metric tons, but they are really not getting that volumes out. Kuala hydrocarbons, they are really not getting that volumes out. And then the NLNG has been the most sustainable supplies, domestic supply source, and even NLNG is doing just 450,000 metric tons if they manage to do all that volume. All right, they have announced that they will do 4,050 metric tons, and they are aiming at that. But when the balance, has to be sourced from somewhere. Sourcing from somewhere means importing it into the country. And if importing these products into the country, which means almost 50% or even a little bit more, is imported into the country. And it's all contingent on sourcing foreign exchange, pricing the foreign exchange, and on top of it, pricing it on the international benchmarks. So when you then have VAT levied on imported cargoes, it means naturally you are just further burdening the pricing of the commodity. And then, but as though that was not bad enough, we've had situations where importers who have been struggling, who have managed to struggle to land their products in Nigeria just to bridge the supply gaps in the market, then have to suffer a sudden demand from the Nigerian customs that they have to pay VATs in retrospect. They never knew, it was never communicated. There was a policy to that effect, but the policy was not announced, for some reason, and then suddenly they are asked to pay outstanding VAT charges since 2020, first quarter 2020 till date. That's a humongous sum. And that has been a massive disincentive for importers to supply this product into the market. Now, with that disincentive has come with a slowdown in imported product supply into the market. It is a slowdown that is created some kind of supply, a drop in volumes or in the market, which is naturally with economics. You know that when there's a volume, when supply slows down, naturally pricing will spike. So that is what is naturally, that's the most impact, is having the most impact on domestic pricing of LPG today.
This is very troubling indeed, because what we seem to be hearing is that this price hike is almost self-inflicted. I mean, not by Nigerians, but of course by the situation in the country on Nigerians, and it's something that we can deal with. It would seem so. Let me turn to you now. You've heard the complaints of those in the industry when they say that VAT component. I know I did hear the Minister of State for Petroleum saying that they can, deal with certain aspects, certain parts of the pricing, but the price of gas internationally has gone up. And then, he also made reference to the fact that exchange rate too has been unstable somewhat. I don't know that when this implementation plan, came up, part of the things that the federal government was thinking of was scrapping VAT for cooking gas. Isn't that the situation? And if it isn't, what has changed? Okay,
so prior to 2017, there was no VAT on the imported LPG, but domestic LPG had VAT imposed on it. So there's a historical aspect to all of this. The Obasanjo government at the time, when the refineries stopped working, in order to stimulate importation, because that's what we had to resort to, gave duty and import and VAT waiver to imported LPG to augment what was coming in, the little bits that were coming in from the refinery, which had become epileptic. So we had a problem by 2017 when imported LPG was now cheaper than the domestically produced LPG, mostly from NLNG at the time. So the first thing was for us to reverse that and remove the VAT on the domestically produced LPG. And that happened in 2019 until a few months back when this VAT was now imposed on the imported LPG, simply because erroneously it was thought that we could be self-sufficient at this stage. We can be self-sufficient going forward on the long term, because yes, we have substantial reserves of gas, but if you don't process that gas, then you're not going to get the volumes. But in the short term, we still need the imports. And so the VAT that was slammed on it has resulted in this situation where the marketers who were importing unfortunately, are being back charged for VAT for the products that were imported back in the second quarter. But it's work in progress now that this is being resolved by the Ministry of Finance.
I'm still trying to understand the logic. You say that for the gas that is produced locally, there's VAT on it.
There was.
There was VAT.
It's been removed.
It's been removed.
That's been removed.
For the gas that is brought in from outside now,
yes,
they decided to impose VAT on it.
That wasn't the case until recently, and that's where the spike has come in.
What was the thinking behind?
Well, the thinking was that we'll be self-sufficient by now, but we're not, unfortunately.
Okay. Is there any consultation with, say, the implementation plan, will I say plan or committee? I'm trying to find an appropriate word. Plan doesn't just quite. There is a plan, but there has to be people to implement the plan.
That's right.
And one would imagine that for those kinds of decisions to be taken, there has to be consultation with people like you and perhaps even the Office of the Vice President to understand where the market is at and whether it is ripe enough for the imposition of VAT. Did that conversation ever happen?
So the review didn't take place before it was done. Now that it was brought to our attention back in August, steps were taken. But as you know, there are different processes to be able to remove it, and that's what's being done. It's work in progress.
Okay, let us wait and see how that eventually works out. But I would like to ask the industry players why it is difficult for us, because we've mentioned how NLNG is the biggest and perhaps the most consistent supplier of LPG. Our guest, Mr. Additional, did mention that there are a few other, I think 2 other major suppliers, but that they're not, you just confirmed that they're not able to meet even what their output says they're able to do, and that, you know, they've been under-delivering somewhat. What would you say have been the hurdles for those who supply LPG locally that is preventing people from going into this market? Because people will always cook and people will always need fuel. Why do you think more and more people are not going into the local production of LPG but are comfortable importing?
It's a cocktail of many issues. It's a Nigeria issue. So it's investment in gas infrastructure is heavy, and those monies are not found domestically. First of all, if you manage to get a local bank who is willing to finance your LPG infrastructure build out, the requirements are usually head and leg. You know, it's Herculean, where perhaps sometimes even collateralization is required in such a manner that doesn't even take into account the infrastructure you're building, which means you're building a gas infrastructure, but you need to apply a separate kind of collateral, say, for example, real estate, to collateralize your assets. That's on the one hand. We hope that project financing will take care of all that. So, but these issues of inconsistencies, all right, are not divorced from the international community. So when you take your project to the international community for financing, and these are the kind of questions they ask you. Oh, well, Mr. Yakubu, you want my financing, but the LPG doesn't have color. If you bring in LPG from overseas versus LPG that is produced locally, how do you differentiate at the pump that this product that you're retailing is from overseas, is a foreign one, or local one? So that's, first of all, just slams the door on of VAT, on LPG. There's no reason there's no reason whatsoever why VAT should even be considered, for LPG, when you know that the other products, the other petroleum products don't even have VAT. So that's on the one. So on the financing, so the reason why some of these local producers are not able to ramp up production is because of these issues. It's also, if a plant is running and they have to maintain the facility, you have to get spares and all that. It requires you raising forex, foreign monies to buy forex. At what rate? How do you even open letters of credit? You open letters of credit today. You do letters of credit. At maturation of these LCs, the banks can't honor because there's no forex supply. So there are many issues, bedeviling infrastructure build-out or maintenance of infrastructure to enable continuous and ramping up of local production of LPG. Not only LPG, gas in general.
I want to confirm from you. Will I say, how are your members? I mean, how are your members taking up this scarcity, this scarcity between the producers of LPG, and whether or not there was any differentiation in the price between LPG that was locally produced here in Nigeria? So, for instance, when you get supply from NLNG, is it at the same price at which you bring in the imported products as well?
Well, it may not necessarily be at the same price, but you see, the market determines the price. The LPG in Nigeria was one of the first, the downstream deregulated products. So the LPG in Nigeria has been deregulated since many years ago, over 20 years ago. So it is actually market determined. Sometimes even traders trade at a loss, but sometimes they trade at profit. So that's really not the problem. It's not the pricing. It's not the market price as a problem. The challenge is the impediments in the market that doesn't allow the wheel to turn smoothly. If you recall, even with the worsening situation with Nigerian foreign naira, LPG price in Nigeria has been relatively stable from 2015, 2016 to 2019, 2020, even earlier 2020. What was the price of LPG? In spite of the loss in naira value, did we experience a commensurate increase in pricing, retail pricing of LPG? No, because the market was taking the hit. So, but the market was taking the hit on unit profit margins on the gas, but they were able to compensate that with the rising demand. So because you had a rising demand, so if I was making 50 naira, for example, on a product, all right, and that 50 naira is slashed because of the landing cost has increased, but my volume has increased, as Dio spoke to earlier. We were from 750,000 metric tons, we have hit 1.2 million metric tons, 1.2 million tons, and it's increasing. So that kind of compensates. So the market compensates itself. And as I said, can we allow this market to continue to grow like this? Because it enables the international community to beam its searchlight, to beam its interest on Nigeria. So just about when infrastructure financing was beginning to relax its terms and conditions for financing Nigeria infrastructure, then we'll begin to see this kind of somersaults, all right, that are exacerbated by policy inconsistencies. And then we hope that these inconsistencies will be taken off so that we can allow the market back to operating normally. But I can tell you, the retailers are not having a funny time right now. They are the ones who are the brunt. They are the ones who are interfacing with consumers, and it's really not their fault, all right? And sometimes some of these retailers are actually trading at a loss, all right? Their margins are really very thin, and the margins are dropping. And come to think of it, that the margins are dropping at the same time when the demand is dropping. A lot of people are switching away from gas at a time when we know.
Mr. Nuhu, I'm afraid I'll have to pause you for a moment. I'll let you finish when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. Well, indeed, we're talking about the price of gas, the rising price of gas. And we're talking to those who should know about why the price of gas is high this morning. Right here in our studios, we have Mr. Dio Additional, that's in the studios in Abuja, that is. We have Mr. Dio Additional, who's a National Program Manager, National LPG Expansion Implementation Program. And we also have Mr. Nuhu Yakubu, President, Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association, who is with us on Zoom in Lagos. I understand that my colleague, Ayo, has questions for you gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. Let me begin with Mr. Additional. You know, interestingly, the National Gas Expansion Program is also included in the Economic Sustainability Plan of the government, which is part of its response to COVID-19 that you talked about the other time. And in that plan, part of the plan is to support the creation of 1 million jobs through the conversion of 30 million homes from dirty fuels to LPG on the one hand, and several others. And there's quite a list of project elements under that one, including
and which is where the question is, implement an awareness and sensitization campaign in partnership with state governments, starting with 12 pilot states in the 6 geopolitical zones. The implementing structure is the Interministerial Committee on LPG, and the timeline is 12 months. The Economic Sustainability Plan started last year, I guess. So you want to speak to us as to why, this hasn't been achieved as significantly as expected, because you said the other time that the review hasn't happened. Is that to say then that the implementing structure, which is the Interministerial Committee on LPG, is not functional?
Thank you. It is functional. Don't forget, with COVID, that slowed us down. We had to restrict our movement. And so we only started this year because then movement allowed us to go into different places. We had started with Lagos, actually, before COVID, in January last year, before COVID hit in about March, April. And so we started again with the FCT. We've done Enugu. Just this 3 days ago, we did Delta. And we're moving to Bauchi, Bayelsa, Gombe, Katsina, in that order. So it's not that the implementing agency is not meeting its target as at when due. It's just that, like I said, COVID restricted movement, because that engagement needs to take place. And then we can inject cylinders, which is
butt in for just a second. My sincere apologies.
Sorry.
Just 1 second. My sincere apologies.
Sure.
The Economic Sustainability Plan, including this gas expansion program, is an intervention in response to COVID-19. And the major objective, the overarching objective, is to build back better, or bouncing back better, if my eyesight is not deceiving me. That's the plan. So I don't know if anyone would agree that we were slowed down as a result of COVID-19. It is a response to COVID-19, and it has a timeline of 12 months.
When I say we were slowed down because we couldn't physically go to those states. I mean, as you know, a lot more people were interacting by Zoom. But for this program, you have to physically go to those states to be able to do the sensitization and awareness campaign. So we were slowed down by that, by lack of movement at the time. But the reviews are constant on the ESP. So there is supervision to monitor what goes on.
Okay.
Now, it's not just the domestic cooking aspect that we have in this plan. We have the autogas in that aspect. We have the LPG to power aspect of it, where 200 cell sites are today running on LPG as a result of transferring people from diesel to LPG because of the emissions that we identified from there. But for domestic, on the domestic cooking side, which is why the interaction with the state governments is quite critical, we definitely were slowed down because we couldn't move into those states until when restrictions on movement and the state governments were ready to receive us as well.
Right.
But at the same time, we were interacting with those state governments, and we needed feedback for certain things from those state governments.
Okay. In the 12-month timeline of this gas expansion program, at least the part that is contained in the Economic Sustainability Plan, the goal is to support creation of 1 million jobs through the conversion of 30 million homes from dirty fuels to LPG. In the number of months, you may want to tell us the number of months since that plan started, at least the Economic Sustainability Plan bit, and now, how many homes would you say have been converted?
Well, if you look at the expansion, I'd say at least over 2 million homes have been converted. Now, what we were supposed to do outside of that target was to have cylinder injection. But the cylinder injection can't take place until you've done the sensitization and awareness campaign, because we've seen that a lot of people are not able to, people who are using firewood and kerosene don't even know how to connect a hose to a cylinder. So that was the start point for us. And I go back to saying that we needed to engage with the state government. So roughly about 2 to 3 million homes. And you can see that from even the consumption figures going from 750,000 tons in 2017 to 1.2 million tons in 2020.
Okay. Well, it would seem like some of the gains that we have gained, some of the gains that we have recorded, and some of the traction we have gained is slowing down. Because that's why I asked if the interministerial committee that is supposed to be working the implementing structure of this plan or this program is active. I don't know if they were able to factor in the implication of that VAT into the whole plan, because if that was factored in and the implementing structure, the interministerial committee on LPG was aware that VAT, all of that application is going to affect the price of gas, and I don't know if they will still have gone ahead. As we speak, you may have seen one of the images that we showed earlier, that there is a rising market for firewood in the country now. People are looking for alternatives to gas. We have gained a lot, but because of this rising cost, we have lost a sizable number of gains that we have recorded. How do you see us reversing this within the shortest possible time? The Yuletide is just ahead of us.
Okay, so there are a number of steps that can be taken. The VAT aspect is work in progress. But also, we need to reduce significantly all exports of LPG from both ExxonMobil, Chevron, and NLNG. NLNG already has taken and reduced their exports to a very significant level, where 50,000 tons is now coming to the market. So there are certain things that can be done where the impact on the price has an immediate effect. There are also a couple of other projects that are going to come on stream that would enable, just like Nuhu said, once there's it's a free deregulated free market product, and so competition and increased number of players would bring down the price. So in the short term, we need to reduce the exports and bring those volumes in country. That would have a significant impact.
Okay. Well, let me ask Mr. Yakubu this. The central bank, of course, tried to weigh in on this and offer some form of intervention, if I can use that term, for the private sector, to come into the business and see what can be done to ramp up things. So in terms of intervention, part of that plan, of the economic sustainability plan, is to have interactions with private sector, some stakeholders, promote and incentivize more domestic supply sources from marginal field operators and reduction of exports from current exporters of LPG. So in terms of that intervention that the CBN put down, 250 billion naira, they say, how significant do you see that as being, and how easy is it for the private sector, the investors who want to go into the business, in order to achieve what Mr. Adesina just talked about now, reducing importation? How do you see that?
Okay, so quickly, let me say this. The VAT imposition negates the economic sustainability plan, first of all, okay? So, because it just does, there's no convergence, all right, between the sustainability plan and the imposition of VAT in the first place. So let me just put that aside. And then on the CBN intervention funds, the fund is not like it's a lot of money. 250 billion naira, if you convert that to dollars, what does it come to, all right? But it's something, it's a start point. But I can tell you that not much of that money has been drawn down because of the requirements to draw it down. So that again is not, in my view, the quickest solution. The low-hanging solution to this problem is what Mr. Additional has spoken to, which is we need to free up more domestic molecules. How do we free up these molecules? Is by reducing exports of LPG out of this country. We have to find ways to domesticate the supply side, to improve supply side by domesticating the products that are exported into Nigeria for our domestic applications. How they're going to do that, I'm not sure, but I think it's with the federal government, the Ministry of Petroleum and the presidency to weigh in and see how they, at least to an extent, if not 100%, but at least to significantly cut down on the volumes that is being exported. CBN has done his bit, pulling all parties together to support. But again, the macroeconomic environment has to be right for that money that CBN is availing us to get to us, the developers. Because if the market is not right, the requirement for accessing the CBN credit, there's a credit appraiser that comes with it, and the macroeconomic environment is not right. The credit appraiser falls flat on its face. So which means you can't access the CBN intervention fund because the commercial banks that are meant to guarantee it will not see any good reason to guarantee your transaction because they know the market is not right for it. So we need to make the market right. And how do you make the market right? Lower the barrier for entry into gas and reverse some of these impediments that have just been introduced by reason of maybe the government thought it was right, but clearly wasn't right.
Well, Mr. Yakubu,
yeah.
my apologies. As far as the people are concerned, as far as consumers are concerned, they just want cooking gas. And as I mentioned earlier, the gains that we have ramped up as a result of the sensitization and the announcements of the federal government that has gone on may have been, we may have lost a significant chunk of that due to this, rising cost occasioned by the VAT that you have also talked about. So in terms of the investments that you are talking about now, how difficult is it really? Because at the end of the day, what people want is cooking gas for their homes. Elimination of dirty fuels, as the federal government is championing, partnership with the states to the effect. Are there bottlenecks that are making it difficult for investors in this specific sector of the energy industry in Nigeria to get into the business or get their businesses running?
No consumer will see gas at an affordable price and don't want to buy gas. So I think that situation will be reversed, okay, given the right conditions, all right? In any
what
case,
are those right conditions?
Pricing, that's what it is. And what shine the right pricing environment is infrastructure costs and levies, unnecessary levies. Government has to understand that gas as a cooking fuel is an essential commodity for Nigerians, and it should not be the target of government for taxation. Rather, gas should be seen as an enabler for domestic, for household wealth creation, and also for industrial growth. All right, because that is where the government would generate taxes from. It's not from taxing the product itself. It is the activities and the commerce that is created from the applicable uses of gas that government will tax. All right, and then you then see quantum return. For government, but the approach to tax the product is very, very wrong. All right, and in any case, we're in a situation where we have a massive national security challenge in our hands, fueled by arid desert encroachment, and we're allowing Nigerians to go back again to cutting firewood, to using firewood by cutting wood from the forest to cook. It's just not right.
Okay.
Something needs to be done very urgently about this, or to reverse it. Otherwise, I don't know.
Well, is VAT the only catalyst for this price increase that we've seen in recent time?
Well, the VAT is a major issue. You know, whereas it's 7.5%, and import duty is maybe 5%, or you know, between 5 and 10%. Or if you add all together, perhaps you're looking at 15%. But the multiplier effect is way more than that 15% you're talking about. Okay. Now there are other levies as well. There are other obnoxious levies that the industry has been fighting. You know, you have all sort of agencies who are levying gas. The government should look in. Even you have non-state players levying gas. You go to the terminal to go and load gas. You have associations that have no bearing, no business with gas whatsoever, levying gas. They'll charge 10,000 naira, sorry, 15,000 per truck, 50,000 per truck, sometimes even 70,000 naira per truck. They have no business with gas. They don't return. They don't plow back that levy back to the gas sector. They don't even train. There's no safety training. There's nothing. It's just a take. So this has to stop. And we have asked government, can you lend us some support to lower these levies, take off all these levies, so we can begin to even know what the issues are.
Okay.
And then the midstream. Let me say this, please. This is very important. The mid and long-term goals would be for the midstream sector to awaken. Okay, we need to produce more inland. We need to activate more inland production of gas. That is the mid and long-term solution. But the short-term solution is to reduce our export of gas, and that will actually help to ramp up more domestic supply. Thank you.
Well, that sounds like a job for Mr. Additional, so let me take it to him. Well, Mr. Additional, you talked about that as well, reducing exportation of LPG so that at least let's use what we can use at home. But for the people who are working on it, who are producing this LPG, it is a business. Is there some incentive to the investors in this sector to ensure that at least, you know, they have good returns on their investments if they are able to keep the exports reduced and supply the domestic market? Mr. Additional, that's for you.
Is that a lot of the people who were hitherto flaring the gas or re-injecting the gas have seen that there's actually a viable market, which was why it was important for this expansion plan to take place, look at the regulatory issues and make sure that there's a proper domestic market rather than the fractionalized market that you had before. So the incentives, government is only going to act as an enabler. Government is not going to be the one to, it's the private sector that would take advantage. And that's why even in our interactions with the state government, Delta State, for example, that we were telling them, look, there's 40% of the reserves in your state. You need to be able to, in conjunction, make an enabling environment for the investors who want to invest in processing plants. A lot of the marketers were complaining about some of the taxes that were coming from the state governments as well, and which is why the engagement with the state governments is very important. But yes, I mean, there's several incentives, the tax holidays that the government has given. The LPG equipment are VAT free.
It's interesting, sorry to interrupt your thoughts.
Sure.
It's interesting that you mentioned Delta.
Yes.
Because I'm sure that you must have seen the governor in recent times, say that the federal government...
It was at the event where
Yes.
we had the sensitization and awareness campaign.
Indeed.
That he made that statement.
Okay.
The 2-day sensitization and awareness campaign that we did, where he made that statement.
So you are saying in turn to him that they will have to pay attention to the environment of doing business, is that right?
Exactly. So because with that, it's available for them. If they don't take advantage of it, then it's just going to remain. We keep saying we have 206 TCF of gas, but these things would remain statistics if we don't have actual programs that would enable us getting that gas to the homes, which is why it's important to have that engagement so that they understand what's required for the private sector to be able to come in and play there. You heard what Nuhu said about some of the levies and taxes that they get from those, some of the state governments. Even the marketers have complained. So it's important, and that's why the engagement with the state governments are very, very crucial in getting this done. But back to the question about what the federal government is doing, this tax holiday that was given to investors in LPG by the president, there's a removal of duty on LPG, imported LPG equipment. The last 4 years, a number of terminals, investment by private sector players, Matrix in Warri, Prudent in Ogara, Dozy in Calabar, and next month Shafa in Warri. A lot of the LPG equipment for those terminals were brought in duty-free. So those are some of the incentives that have been given.
So how quickly do you think we'll see the price of gas go down? Because one will imagine that you should have started engagements by now, at least telling those in government that this is threatening another program of government. So I don't know how they're taking that on board, and how quickly are we going to see the reduction in the price
it's an emergency, and you heard what the Honourable Minister of State for Petroleum said 2 days ago. It's been brought to the President's attention, but before then, His Excellency the Vice President had actually started interventions, and which had the Honourable Minister of Finance engage with Customs on this. The real issue is the retroactive aspect of that VAT, where companies are being charged 22 billion, some 4 billion to pay within 7 days. That has led to the marketers saying they're not importing anymore because that's a huge disincentive. So, like I said, it's work in progress, resolving that, and it's an emergency for us.
Where did that order, where did that directive come from? The directive to charge VAT on cooking gas?
Well, I think there was between Customs and FIRS. I mean, FIRS is the implementing, as the
so we should hold FIRS responsible.
And Customs.
and Customs.
And Customs
responsible for the price, or the increase in the price of gas.
Is work in progress at this point in time. The Honourable Minister of Finance has engaged Customs, and there was actually a meeting between the Ministry of Finance, Customs, and the LPG importers.
When?
They've had 2 engagements already. That's why I said it's work in progress. They've had 2 engagements.
Okay, well, we hope that, I just wanted to confirm if there's a differentiation between cooking gas and gas that also some companies need to fire their plants and things of the sort. Is that a differentiation as well?
Well, there's a difference. There's natural gas, and there's liquefied petroleum gas, and there's also liquefied natural gas, LNG. So there's a difference. There's also compressed natural gas. But for this purpose, I mean, it's actually LPG, liquefied petroleum gas, that we're talking about. Okay,
so specifically it was LPG that was, that VAT was imposed upon. Well, we have to thank you for your interventions. We have to thank both of you gentlemen for your interventions this morning. We want to believe that the engagements will happen a lot quicker and faster. The Minister of State for Petroleum did talk about the prices coming down before the Yuletide. It's almost the 30th of November. We're almost into the first week of December, and a lot of families usually buy perhaps towards the end of the month. So we'll be looking to see if the engagements will happen quickly enough for the price of gas to really come down before the celebration season begins. But we have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. We've been speaking with Mr. Dayo Additional, who is the National Program Manager, National LPG Expansion Implementation Plan. And we've also had via Zoom in Lagos, Mr. Nuhu Yakubu, who is the President, Nigeria Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you, Malapai. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's quickly go through a few mails which we have received, and as expected, the first mails are cooking gas. I told you we got you. This is from Kumene Thompson, obviously a new writer, saying that gas that is being produced comes in 5 phases: C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5. The C1 and C2 are liquefied and shipped, while the C3 and C4 are what comes to the NGC, and from there we get the cooking gas. and the gas for driving gas engines. We don't need to import this. Why then are we talking of international pricing when the product, cooking gas, is gotten locally? Well, something, apparently we do import some parts of it. We've been told that we do not get everything here. But I'm sure that there'll be future engagements as well, and perhaps that will be delved into a little more. Ayo.
Yes, Henry is talking about the same thing. Stemming the rising cost of cooking gas is a national emergency. Government's economic policies are expected to mitigate cost of living and not the opposite. Imperatively, the proliferation of cooking gas vendors in every street in Nigeria negates the principles of public safety and standardization. These two must be stemmed to avoid preventable disasters. This is very, very, very true.
Indeed. Oloriloba Adeniyi also talking about cooking gas, says the country's high dependence on importation of LPG plays a major role in the price hike. There's no shortcut solution to the problem. As long as the dollar keeps appreciating against the naira, the price of cooking gas will keep increasing. Well, it can be mitigated long term, but certainly not impossible.
It has to be mitigated, Malcolm. Olagunjo Oladele, talking about the Nigeria-South Africa relations discussion we had. The Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission is aimed at strengthening the relationship between the two countries. South Africa needs Nigeria as much as we need them. However, it looks like Nigeria is yet to benefit economically from this relationship. Nigeria accounts for less than 1% of SA's exports. In 2018, Nigeria's imports from SA amounted to $514.3 million, while SA's imports from Nigeria were $3.83 billion.
Well, Isioma Chigbolu says the Nigeria and South Africa biannual summit sounds good. Invariably, it will ease tension between ordinary Nigerians and South Africans. Let's hope the meeting will be fruitful. And Festus Akimboyewa has this. He said, whilst it's good that Nigeria and South Africa are keen to promote continuing cooperation, it's no secret that South Africa wants to be Africa's dominant power. The two countries must recognize that they have more to gain from working together than being rivals. And the two presidents must address the suspicion and open hostility facing Nigerians who call South Africa home. Well, thank you so much for your engagement all through the week. Thank you for being such wonderful viewers of this program and for making it worthwhile for us to be here every day. We don't take it for granted. Thank you for watching this week. I'm Maokbe Ogun Yusuf.
I'm Ayo Makine. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend and bye for now.